Most daughters expect a toast on their 30th birthday. I received a public eviction notice from my own lineage. When my parents announced to the crowded ballroom at the Marrow House that I was being disowned for the sake of their reputation. The room went dead silent. They expected me to crumble. Instead, I walked to the stage, took the microphone from my father's hand, and calmly told the guests they had exactly 3 minutes to hear the truth. The air inside the Marrow House event loft was calibrated to a precise, museum-grade chill. It was the kind of temperature that preserved flowers and froze smiles. As I handed my coat to the cloakroom attendant, I smoothed the fabric of my dress, a deep emerald silk that I had bought for myself 3 months ago. I had hesitated at the price tag, then swiped my card with a thrill of private rebellion. Tonight was my 30th birthday, a milestone that my mother, Celeste, had insisted on orchestrating with the tactical precision of a political summit. I checked my reflection in the antique mirror by the entrance. I looked composed. I looked successful. I looked like the dutiful daughter of Graham and Celeste Stewart, pillars of the Briar Glen philanthropic community. But beneath the silk, my stomach was a knot of cold dread. I walked into the main hall. The venue was stunning. I had to give them that. It was an old textile mill converted into an event space, with exposed brick walls, soaring timber beams, and industrial chandeliers that cast a warm, flattering glow over the 100 or so guests already mingling. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner, innocuous and polite. My best friend, Maya Ellison, materialized at my elbow almost immediately. She was holding 2 flutes of champagne and looked ready to fight someone. "Happy birthday, Nora," she said, keeping her voice low. She handed me a glass. "Do not drink this too fast. You are going to need your wits." I took a sip. It was dry, expensive, and tasted like metal. "Is it that bad?" I asked. Maya gestured vaguely toward the seating chart displayed on a massive easel near the bar. "Go look at where they put you." I navigated through the crowd, nodding at people I had known since kindergarten, people who offered tight smiles and generic well wishes. I reached the easel. The calligraphy was elegant, looping and golden. I scanned the head table, expecting to see my name next to my parents, or perhaps my brother, Ethan. My name was not there. I frowned and moved my eyes down the list. I found myself at table 9. It was situated near the kitchen doors, flanked by a column that would obscure my view of the stage. Seated with me were not my close friends from college or my colleagues from Brightwell Housing, but a collection of my parents' distant acquaintances, people who would be too polite to speak to me beyond the weather. Maya appeared behind me again. They exiled the birthday girl to the nosebleed section. She whispered, "What is going on?" "Nora." I stared at the chart. It felt petty. A classic Celeste Stewart power move designed to remind me of my place, but it also felt strategic. If I was at table 9, I was not part of the core family unit. I was an observer. "I do not know," I said. "I honestly do not know." I made my way to the front of the room to greet my parents. They were holding court near the stage, looking every inch the power couple. My father, Graham, wore a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, his silver hair brushed back, his posture rigid. My mother was in a silver gown that shimmered like chainmail. "Mother," I said, approaching them. "Dad." Celeste turned. Her eyes swept over me, assessing the dress, my hair, my jewelry. She did not smile. "Nora," she said, "you are late. I am on time." "Actually," I said, checking the sleek analog clock on the wall. "The invitation said 7. It is 7. We have guests who have been here since 6:30, my father said, not looking at me. He was looking over my shoulder, his gaze fixed on a man standing near the audio booth. I turned to follow his line of sight. The man was in a gray suit, tailored but undistinguished. He was not drinking, and he was not mingling. He held a tablet against his chest and was speaking into a wired earpiece. He looked like corporate security, or perhaps a crisis manager. "Who is that?" I asked. "A consultant from Hawthorne and Wicks," my father said dismissively. "Business. Do not worry about it. Go to your seat." Nora, we are about to begin. He did not hug me. He did not say happy birthday. He brushed past me, heading toward the man in gray. I felt a cold prickle of unease that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. This did not feel like a party. It felt like a briefing. I walked to table 9. The guest there smiled politely as I sat down. To my left was Mrs. Higgins, the wife of a local zoning board member. To my right was a man I vaguely recognized as a junior partner at my father's golf club. "So, Mrs. Higgins said, beaming. 30, a big year. Are you still working at that housing project management firm?" I corrected gently. "And yes, I am very proud of the work we do." My mother stood at the microphone at the front of the room. The jazz quartet faded into silence. The lights dimmed. "Welcome and all, everyone," Celeste said. Her voice was warm, projected perfectly to the back of the room. "Thank you for joining us to celebrate this evening." She did not say to celebrate Nora. She just said this evening. "We have prepared a short presentation." She continued, a look back at the years. A screen descended from the ceiling. The projector hummed to life. I braced myself for the usual embarrassing baby photos, the awkward middle school years, the graduation shots, and for a moment, that is what it was. There was a photo of me at 5, holding a balloon, a photo of me at 10, riding a pony, but as the slideshow continued, the unease in my gut turned into a hard knot. There was a photo of our family trip to Martha's Vineyard when I was 12. I remembered that day vividly because my grandmother, my father's mother, had been there. She had held my hand on the pier, laughing as the wind whipped her hair. In the photo on the screen, my grandmother was gone. The image had been cropped tight, removing her entirely, leaving just me standing next to my father, looking up at him with adoration. I blinked. Why would they crop Grandma Sylvie out? Then came a photo from my college graduation. In reality, my arm had been around my then-boyfriend, a jagged artist named Leo, whom my parents had loathed, on the screen. The photo ended at my shoulder. I stood alone in my cap and gown. Image after image, the pattern repeated. Anyone who was not my parents or my brother had been surgically removed. My friends, my extended family, even my favorite teachers. It was a revisionist history where only the nuclear Stewart family existed. But it was worse than that. The photos selected of me were off. They chose the ones where I looked slightly frantic, or unkempt, or dependent. A shot of me crying after a scraped knee, a candid from a wedding where I looked intoxicated, though I had only been laughing mid-blink. The narrative was subtle, but to me, it was screaming, "Look at this girl. She is messy. She is emotional. She needs us." I looked across the room at Maya. She was frowning at the screen, her champagne glass forgotten. She saw it too. The slideshow ended with a black screen and the logo of the Stewart Harbor Initiative, my parents' charitable foundation. It lingered there for a long 5 seconds. The lights came up. Polite applause rippled through the room. My brother, Ethan, walked to the stage. Ethan was 26, handsome in a soft, malleable way. He had our mother's eyes and our father's chin, but he lacked the steel that defined them both. Tonight, he looked terrified. He was sweating. He kept patting the pocket of his jacket, checking for his phone. He stood at the microphone and unfolded a piece of paper. His hands were shaking. "Good evening," Ethan said. His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "Good evening. I am here to toast my sister, Nora." He did not look at me. He looked at the paper. Growing up, Nora was always spirited. He read. The words sounded foreign in his mouth, like he was reading a translation. She felt things deeply, sometimes too deeply for the world to understand. I stiffened in my chair. "We have always tried to protect her." Ethan continued, his pace accelerating. "We have always tried to provide a safety net, because family is about catching those who fall, and Nora has fallen many times." The room was silent. This was not a birthday toast. This was a character assassination disguised as pity. I stared at my brother. "Look at me." I willed him. "Look at your sister." He refused. He kept his eyes glued to the script. "So tonight," he said, rushing to the finish line, "we celebrate the strength of this family and our commitment to doing what is right, no matter how hard it is. Happy birthday, Nora." He stepped back from the mic like it was hot iron. He immediately pulled out his phone, typed something rapidly, and shoved it back into his pocket. He looked like a man waiting for an extraction team. My father took the stage next. He adjusted the microphone stand, raising it. He looked powerful. He looked sad. It was a perfect performance. "Thank you, Ethan," my father said. His voice was deep, resonant. The voice of a man who sat on boards and signed checks that built hospital wings. He looked out at the audience, making eye contact with the key players in the room, the bankers, the lawyers, the partners. He did not look at table 9. "We have an important announcement to make tonight," he said, "and we wanted to do it here, among friends, because we believe in transparency." My mother joined him on stage. She took his hand. It was a gesture of solidarity that looked scripted to the millimeter. "We love our daughter very much," my mother said. Her voice wavered perfectly. "But we have come to a difficult realization. Over the last few years, Nora's behavior has become increasingly unstable." The word hung in the air. A few guests shifted in their seats. I felt the blood drain from my face. Unstable. I was a project manager overseeing multi-million-dollar housing developments. I had a credit score of 800. "I watered my plants. She has refused our help," my father added. "She has rejected the guidance of professionals, and her actions have begun to pose a risk not just to herself, but to the reputation of this family and the work we do at the Stewart Harbor Initiative." I gripped the tablecloth. The fabric was rough under my fingertips. I saw the man in the gray suit, the consultant from Hawthorne and Wicks, nod once. A short, sharp motion. "Therefore," my father said, his voice hardening, "becoming the hammer, we are formally announcing that as of tonight, we are severing all financial and legal ties with Nora. We are disowning her." The room froze. The silence was absolute. It was a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the cavernous space. "Not out of malice," my mother added quickly, softening the blow, "but out of necessity. We cannot allow her volatility to jeopardize the future of the foundation. We hope this, rock bottom, will finally encourage her to seek the treatment she needs." I sat there, paralyzed. It felt like a physical blow to the chest. Humiliation, hot and acidic, flooded my veins. Everyone was looking at me. Their faces were a blur of pity, shock, and morbid curiosity. They were painting me as crazy. They were painting me as a liability. And they were doing it in front of the entire social and financial hierarchy of Briar Glen. Why? The question rang in my mind. Why do this now? Why do this here? I looked around the room, forcing my brain to work through the shock. I saw the event photographer. He was not surprised. He was positioned perfectly to capture my reaction at table 9. He had a telephoto lens trained right on my face. I looked at the DJ booth. The music had been lowered to 0, not just faded. The DJ was watching the stage, waiting for a cue. I looked at the man in the gray suit. He was typing on his tablet, his face impassive. This was staged, every second of it. This was not a family tragedy spilling over into public. This was a product launch. The product was the Stewart family integrity, and the cost was me. Something inside me snapped, but it did not snap into hysteria. It snapped into cold, hard clarity. I pushed my chair back. The scrape of wood against the floor echoed in the silent room. I stood up. My mother's eyes widened slightly. She expected me to run. She expected me to cry and flee the room, cementing the narrative of the unstable, emotional daughter. I did not run. I walked toward the stage. My legs felt heavy, but my steps were steady. I could feel the eyes of 100 people on my back. I focused on the microphone stand. Graham, my father, looked at me with a warning in his eyes. Sit down. That look said, "Do not make this worse." I walked up the stairs to the stage. I stood next to my parents. I smelled my mother's perfume, lavender and cold steel. I reached for the microphone. My father's hand twitched, as if he wanted to stop me, but he froze. He could not wrestle me for the mic in front of the mayor's wife. He had to play the grieving, patient father. I took the microphone from the stand. It was heavy and cold. I turned to face the room. The lights were bright, blinding. I squinted against the glare and found the faces in the dark. "Please stay for exactly 3 minutes," I said. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. I sounded like I was running a site meeting at Brightwell. "I will say one thing, and then I will leave." I took a breath. The silence in the room was different now. It was not the silence of shock. It was the silence of anticipation. "My parents have told you a story tonight," I said. "They have told you that I am financially dependent on them. They have told you that I am unstable. They have told you that they are cutting me off for my own good." I looked directly at the man in the gray suit. He stopped typing. "Here is the truth," I said. "I have not received a single dollar from Graham or Celeste Stewart since I was 26 years old." A murmur ran through the crowd. "I paid off my student loans 2 years ago," I continued, my voice gaining strength. "I purchased my own home 18 months ago. It is under an LLC called Northline Ledger. You can look it up in the county registry. My mortgage is paid by my salary, which I earn as a project manager. I do not have a trust fund. I do not have an allowance." I turned to look at my parents. My mother's smile was frozen, a rictus of panic. My father's face was turning a mottled red. "So," I said, turning back to the audience, "this announcement of disowning me is performative. You cannot cut off someone who is not attached." I saw Maya standing near the back, her fist raised in silent solidarity. "But I understand why they are doing this," I said. "I understand that for the Stewart Harbor Initiative to grow, the family image must be flawless. And a daughter who asks questions is a flaw." I reached into my small clutch purse. I did not pull out a tissue. I pulled out a folded square of paper. It was just a prop, a symbol, but they did not know that. "I have a packet," I said calmly. "It contains copies of emails, contracts, and financial records. It is currently sealed." My father took a step toward me. "Nora," he warned, his voice a low growl. I held up a hand. "I am not going to read them tonight," I said. "I have too much respect for your guests, but I want to make one thing clear. If my name is mentioned in the press, or if my reputation is attacked to secure a business deal, I will deliver this packet to an attorney." I let that sink in. "I have receipts," I said simply. I placed the microphone back on the stand. It clicked into place with a sound like a gavel strike. I did not look at my parents again. I turned and walked down the stairs. The room was electric. No one was eating. No one was drinking. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, my father lunged. He moved faster than I expected, grabbing my wrist. His grip was painful, his fingers digging into my tendon. "You ungrateful little," he hissed, his face inches from mine. I did not pull away. I looked down at his hand on my arm. Then I looked up at the room. Everyone was watching. Mrs. Higgins, the bankers, the photographer. My father realized it a second too late. He was breaking character. The benevolent patriarch was showing his teeth. He released my wrist as if it burned him. He stepped back, smoothing his jacket, forcing a tight, apologetic smile to the nearest table. I rubbed my wrist. I did not say a word to him. I walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. I saw respect in some eyes, fear in others. Maya was waiting at the door. She handed me my coat. "Let's go," she said. I glanced back one last time. My mother had taken the microphone. She was laughing, a high, brittle sound. "Oh, goodness," she was saying. "You see the drama, the emotions. Let's get the music back on. Shall we? We are here to celebrate." She was smiling too widely. Her eyes were dead, but her mouth was stretching, straining to hold the illusion together. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the night air. It was cold, but it felt real. I walked to Maya's car, my heels clicking on the pavement. I did not cry. I did not look back at the Marrow house. I got into the passenger seat, closed the door, and waited for the shaking to start. The morning after my 30th birthday did not feel like a fresh start. It felt like the aftermath of a car crash where everyone walked away uninjured, but the vehicle was totaled. I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, with the silence of the suburbs pressing against the windows. For a few seconds, I drifted in that blissful, groggy state where memory hasn't yet booted up. Then the phone on my nightstand buzzed. A long, angry vibration against the wood. Then another, then three in rapid succession. I rolled over and picked it up. My screen was a wall of notifications. Texts from friends I hadn't spoken to in years. Instagram DMs from people I barely knew. A missed call from a number I didn't recognize. I opened Instagram first. It was a mistake. The top post on my feed was from an account called the Briar Glen Social Circle. It was a curated lifestyle page that usually posted photos of charity galas, equestrian events, and heavily filtered pictures of lattes. Today, the top post was a video reel titled, "A Difficult Decision, the Stewart Family Moves Forward." I pressed play. The video was a masterclass in manipulation. It opened with a slow-motion shot of my parents holding hands on stage, looking devastated. The caption overlaid in elegant white font read, "Heartbreak at the Marrow House." Then, it cut to my brother, Ethan, looking down at his feet, looking small and defeated. Then came the edit. They had used footage of me walking to the stage, but they had slowed it down just enough to make my gait look uneven, almost stumbling. They had cut the audio of my actual speech. Instead of my calm voice listing my financial independence, they had spliced in audio from what sounded like a moment of feedback from the microphone, followed by a disjointed sentence fragment where I said, "My parents have told you," and then cut abruptly to me walking away. The editing made me look manic. It made me look like I had stormed the stage, babbled incoherently, and fled. The caption underneath drove the nail in last night. Prominent philanthropists Graham and Celeste Stewart made the brave choice to publicly address their daughter's struggle with instability. "We stand with the Stewart family as they navigate this private tragedy." Private tragedy. They had posted it to 40,000 followers. I scrolled through the comments. So brave of them to set boundaries. I heard she screamed at the waiters. "Mental health is so important. Sending love to Celeste." I felt a cold, metallic taste in my mouth. It wasn't just a lie. It was a coordinated narrative. They weren't just disowning me. They were erasing my credibility before I could even establish it. They were salting the earth so nothing I said would ever grow. I threw the phone onto the duvet and got up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so cold it felt like hypothermia. I walked down the hall to my small home office. It was a converted guest room, painted a soft sage green, filled with the drafting tables and blueprints from my job at Brightwell. I knelt by the filing cabinet in the corner, the one I kept locked with a physical key I wore on a chain around my neck. I unlocked the bottom drawer and pulled out a thick, expanding file folder. The label on the tab was handwritten in black ink, "Grandma Sylvie." I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside wasn't money or jewels. It was paper. Years of paper. I traced the edge of the first document. It was a photocopy of a trust agreement I had found in the trash when I was 22. Beside it was a note from my grandmother, written on her personalized stationery 2 weeks before she died. Her handwriting was spidery but forceful. "Nora." The note read, "Never sign what you do not read, even if it is family, especially if it is family. They trade in appearances, and appearances are expensive." I had started this file the day she died. At first, it was just grief. I wanted to keep things that felt like her. But then, I started noticing things. The way my father spoke about tax efficiency at dinner. The way my mother would sign documents for me without showing me the pages. I had started collecting. A bank statement here, a vendor contract there. I didn't even know what most of it meant back then. I just knew that Grandma Sylvie had been afraid, and she was the strongest woman I knew. If she was afraid, I should be terrified. My phone buzzed again from the bedroom. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, I heard a car door slam in my driveway, then the front door code being punched in. Maya walked in. She was wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, holding 2 large coffees and a bag of bagels. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "Do not look at the internet," she said, kicking off her shoes. "Too late," I said from the doorway of the office. Maya groaned and handed me a coffee. "It is everywhere." Nora. The local mommy blogs picked it up. Even the Alumni Association from our high school posted a vague statement about supporting families in crisis. It is a hit job. I took the coffee. It was hot, grounding. Maya sat on my living room couch and pulled out her laptop. "We need to clap back," she said, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I can draft a statement. We have the video from my phone, the real video, where you sound like a boss and they look like deer in headlights. We post it everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. We tag the Marrow House. We tag your parents. We burn it down." I stared at the steam rising from my cup. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. I wanted to scream the truth from the rooftops. I wanted to post the screenshots of my mortgage payments. I wanted to humiliate them the way they had humiliated me. But then I remembered the man in the gray suit, the consultant. He had nodded. He had known the DJ would cut the music. He had known the photographer was ready. They had planned for a scene. They wanted a scene. If I went online and started a war, I would look exactly like the unstable daughter they were painting me to be. I would be feeding the beast. "No," I said. Maya stopped typing. "What? No social media?" I said. "That is their arena. They have bots. They have the Briar Glen social circle. They have money to boost posts. If I fight them there, I lose. I become the crazy daughter ranting on the internet. So what do we do?" Maya asked. "Just let them destroy your reputation, Nora. People are saying you are on drugs. People are saying you stole from the foundation." I walked to the window and looked out at my front lawn. The grass was long. I needed to mow it. Normal life problems. I'm not going to fight them on Instagram. I said, I am going to fight them in a room where lies cost money. I turned back to Maya. "Find me a lawyer." I said, "Not the family lawyer. Not anyone in Briar Glen. I want someone who eats sharks for breakfast. And I want them in Cresthaven." "Why Cresthaven?" "Because my parents don't own Cresthaven." I said. 2 hours later, I was driving 40 minutes south to the city of Cresthaven. It was a grittier city than Briar Glen, a place of industry and commerce rather than old money and country clubs. I had an appointment at Kleinford Legal Group. Maya had found them. They were a mid-sized firm, not one of the massive corporate factories, but they had a reputation for handling defamation and nasty corporate divorces. Their website had a simple slogan, "We reclaim the narrative." The office was on the 14th floor of a glass building downtown. The waiting room smelled of lemon polish and old leather. I sat there for 10 minutes, clutching my purse, rehearsing what I would say. A woman opened the frosted glass door. She was about 40, with sharp features and glasses perched on the end of her nose. She wore a navy suit that looked like it could deflect bullets. "Nora Stewart," she said. "I am Elise Caraway. Come in." We sat in her office. It was cluttered but organized. Piles of files on the desk. A view of the harbor out the window. Elise didn't offer me tea or sympathy. She opened a notepad and looked at me. "I saw the video." She said, "Your friend sent over the link when she called. It is brutal. It is a lie." I said, "Legally, lie is a tricky word." Elise said. She leaned back. "Tell me what happened. Not the emotional version. The facts." I told her. I told her about the seating chart, the cropped photos, the rehearsed speeches, the man in the gray suit. I told her about my announcement, about the fact that I had been financially independent for years. When I finished, Elise tapped her pen against the desk. "Here is the hard truth. Nora," she said, "disowning an adult child has no legal meaning. You are 30. They do not owe you money. They do not owe you a relationship. They can stand on a stage and say they never want to see you again, and that is their right. I felt my heart sink. So there is nothing I can do. I did not say that. Elise said. She leaned forward. They have the right to cut ties. They do not have the right to destroy your livelihood to do it. She pulled up the video on her computer monitor. They use the words unstable and liability. She said, in a room full of your potential employers, business partners, and social connections, and then they distributed it globally. That moves from family drama into tortious interference and defamation. They are not just hurting your feelings, they are damaging your economic future. Why, I asked. That is the part I do not understand. I am their daughter, even if they hate me. Why burn the bridge so publicly? They care about their image more than anything. Having a crazy daughter is bad for their brand. Why spotlight it? Elise looked at me. She had eyes that seemed to see through walls, because the spotlight is the point. She said, you said they only punish publicly when they need an audience. Who was the audience? Nora. The donors. I said, the board members. Elise shook her head. No. Those people are already in their pocket. They need an audience for a specific narrative. She turned her monitor around. I did some digging before you got here. She said, Kleinford keeps tabs on the major regional players. Your parents' foundation, the Stewart Harbor Initiative, has been stagnating for 3 years. Donations are down 20%. But she clicked a mouse. A news article from a financial journal popped up. Redmere Capital Partners is looking to award a $50 million partnership grant to a regional family foundation next month. Elise read, the criteria for the grant are strict. They focus on generational stability, legacy planning, and compliance. I stared at the screen. $50 million. That was enough to fund the foundation for a decade. It was enough to build wings of hospitals. It was enough to buy power. They need to look like a fortress, Elise said. If they have a daughter who is independent, who asks questions, who has her own LLC, that looks like a crack in the foundation. It looks like risk. So they cut off the limb to save the body. I whispered. Exactly, Elise said. They frame you as the problem. They announce they have handled the problem. They look decisive. They look like they prioritize the foundation above personal sentiment. Redmere loves that kind of cold-blooded efficiency. I felt sick. It wasn't just cruelty. It was a business transaction. My reputation for $50 million. And there is one more thing, Elise said. She clicked to another tab. This is the list of finalists for the Redmere Future Leaders Mentorship Program. It is a fast-track executive pipeline. Very prestigious. I looked at the list. Third name down. Ethan Stewart, my brother. They are selling him too. I said, he is the replacement. Elise corrected. You are the liability. He is the asset, but only if he plays the role. I left the office with a retainer agreement and a headache that throbbed behind my eyes. Elise had given me homework. I needed to document everything. Every text, every email, every interaction. We are not going to sue them yet, she had said. We are going to wait. They think you are broken. Let them think that. When they get comfortable, they will make a mistake, and we will be there to catch it. I sat in my car in the parking garage and pulled out my phone. I hesitated, then opened my text thread with Ethan. The last message was from me, sent 3 days ago. Can't wait to see you at the party, I typed. I know about Redmere. I know you're part of the deal. I stared at it. It sounded angry. I deleted it. I typed, are you okay? No. He wasn't the victim here. I typed, I know why they did it. You don't have to go down with the ship. Ethan, sent. The 3 dots appeared almost immediately. He was watching his phone. The dots rippled for a long time. Then they stopped. Then they started again. Finally, a message appeared. Please don't make this worse. That was it. No apology. No, I didn't know. Just a plea for silence so he could secure his bag. I threw the phone into the passenger seat. I needed my things. I had moved out of my parents' house 6 years ago. But like many adult children, I had left boxes in the attic, yearbooks, winter coats, my first sketches, and most importantly, The rest of the files from Grandma Sylvie's office that I hadn't been able to fit in my apartment at the time. I drove to Briar Glen. The house, a sprawling colonial with white pillars and manicured hedges, looked perfectly peaceful. It looked like the kind of home where people baked cookies and played board games. I pulled into the driveway. My father's car was gone, but my mother's Mercedes was there. I walked up the front steps. I reached for my key, the one I had carried on my ring since I was 16. I slid it into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again, jiggled it. Nothing. They had changed the locks. Less than 24 hours after the party. I rang the doorbell. I stood there, feeling the humiliation wash over me again. I was a guest at my own home. No, not a guest. An intruder. The door opened. It wasn't the housekeeper. It was Celeste. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater and jeans. She looked rested. She looked calm. "Nora," she said. Her voice was soft, almost welcoming. "I was hoping you would come by. I want my things," I said. She smiled. A sad, patient smile. "The kind you give a toddler who has thrown a tantrum. We thought it would be best to help you organize," she said. She stepped back. The foyer was empty, but just beyond the door, lined up on the pristine porch, were 6 cardboard boxes. They were sealed with heavy packing tape. "Everything is there," she said. "We packed it this morning." "You went through my things?" I asked, my voice rising. "We packed your things," she corrected gently. "There is a difference. We just wanted to make sure you had everything you needed for your transition." I looked at the boxes. They were labeled in her handwriting. Nora, clothes, Nora, books, Nora, miscellaneous. It was a hostile eviction disguised as a care package. I grabbed the nearest box. It was heavy. Why, I asked her. Just tell me why. Was it the money? Celeste leaned against the doorframe. She crossed her arms. "Nora, darling," she said, "you are looking at this all wrong. We are not the villains. We are trying to save the family. And that includes you. By destroying me, by giving you a chance to reset," she said. She lowered her voice, leaning in. "You can still fix this. You know. How?" I asked. "Apologize," she said. I stared at her. "Apologize. Publicly," she continued. "Release a statement. Say you were overwhelmed. Say you are seeking help. Say you are grateful for our support. If you do that, we can help you. We can cover your mortgage. We can make sure you have a job. Maybe not at Brightwell, but somewhere. Quieter." I realized then what she wanted. She didn't just want me gone. She wanted me controlled. If I apologized, I validated their lie. I became the unstable daughter who needed their charity. I became the tax write-off. I became the cautionary tale that made them look like saints. "And if I don't?" I asked. Celeste sighed. She looked at her manicured nails. "Then you are on your own. Nora, truly on your own. And Briar Glen is a very small town." I looked at her. I really looked at her. I saw the fear behind her eyes. She was terrified. She was terrified that I wouldn't fold. She was terrified that the Redmere deal would fall through if I made noise. I picked up the box. "I am not apologizing," I said, "and I am not unstable. I am just the only one in this family who isn't for sale." I carried the box to my car. I went back for the next one. Celeste watched me the whole time. She didn't offer to help. She didn't close the door. She just stood there, the gatekeeper of the fortress, watching the exile leave. When I loaded the last box, I turned to her. "Goodbye, Mother," I said. She didn't answer. She just closed the door. The click of the deadbolt echoed across the lawn. Back at my house, I carried the boxes into the living room. I didn't want to open them. I wanted to burn them, but I needed to know what they had taken. I needed to know what was missing. I sliced the tape on the box labeled Nora. Books. It was mostly old textbooks, some novels from high school. And there, at the bottom, was the stack of cookbooks I had inherited from Grandma Sylvie. My heart hammered. Had they gone through the books? I pulled out the copy of The Joy of Cooking. It was a vintage edition, the spine cracked and held together with Scotch tape. It smelled like vanilla and old dust. I fanned the pages. Nothing fell out. I felt a wave of panic. I had hidden it there 5 years ago. Had Celeste found it? Had she removed it? I checked the other books. Mastering the Art of French Cooking. The Silver Palette. Nothing. I went back to the joy of cooking. I opened it to the dessert section. Grandma Sylvie had always had a sweet tooth. I turned the pages slowly. Brownies, cakes, cookies, and then, stuck between pages 624 and 625, the recipe for Blitz Tort. I felt a lump. I looked closer. The pages were glued together, not with age, but with purpose. 2 pages had been carefully pasted at the edges to form a pocket. I slid my finger into the gap and tore the paper slightly. I pulled out a small, manila envelope. It was no bigger than a playing card. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. They hadn't found it. They had packed the books without opening them. They were so focused on evicting me. They hadn't bothered to look at what they were throwing out. I sat on the floor and opened the envelope. Inside was a silver key. It was a standard padlock key, indistinguishable from a million others, except for a small piece of masking tape wrapped around the head. On the tape, written in Grandma Sylvie's unmistakable scrawl, was a number 402. There was also a slip of paper. It was a receipt from a place called Larkspur Falls Self-Storage. The date on the receipt was from 8 years ago. The account was paid in cash, prepaid for 10 years. I stared at the address. Larkspur Falls was a sleepy town about an hour north, near the New Hampshire border. It was nowhere near where we lived. It was nowhere near where my grandmother had lived. Why would Sylvie Stewart, the matriarch of Briar Glen, have a storage unit in Larkspur Falls? I turned the receipt over. On the back, in blue ballpoint pen, she had written 3 words: for the reckoning. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. My grandmother had known. She had known something was wrong with the family, with the foundation, with the money, and she had hidden the proof. She had buried it, not in a bank vault where my father could reach it, but in a dusty storage unit in a town nobody visited, and she had left it for me. She knew they would come for me eventually. She knew I was the only one who wouldn't bend. I closed my hand around the key. The metal was cold against my palm. My mother wanted me to apologize. She wanted me to disappear. She thought she had stripped me of everything: my reputation, my family, my past. But she was wrong. She hadn't stripped me of everything. She had just handed me the weapon I needed to fight back. I stood up. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of water. I grabbed my car keys. I wasn't going to wait. I wasn't going to let Elise Carraway tell me to be patient. I needed to see what was in Unit 402. I walked out the door, the silver key burning a hole in my pocket. The timeline had just moved up. The drive to Larkspur Falls took exactly 58 minutes. I spent the entire time gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The landscape changed from the manicured suburbs of Briar Glen to the denser, wooded hills of the northern county. Larkspur Falls was a town time had forgotten, a place of faded brick storefronts and gas stations that still sold maps. The storage facility was on the outskirts, a long, low building surrounded by a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. It looked abandoned, which I suppose was the point. Grandma Sylvie hadn't wanted a place with security cameras and digital logs. She wanted a ghost town. I punched the gate code from the receipt 1945, and the gate rattled open. I drove to Unit 402. It was an exterior unit with a rusted orange door. I got out of the car. The wind was picking up, blowing dead leaves across the asphalt. I took the silver key from my pocket. It slid into the padlock with a satisfying click. I pulled the shackle down and rolled up the door. Dust motes danced in the sudden shaft of sunlight. The unit was small, maybe 5 feet by 10 feet. It smelled of old paper and dry wood. Inside, sitting on wooden pallets to keep them off the concrete floor, were 6 banker boxes. They were white, pristine, and labeled in black marker. Vendor contracts, 2012 to 2015. Board minutes, correspondence, G.S. to C.S. On top of the first stack sat a laptop. It was an old Dell model. thick and heavy, the kind that looked like it could survive a drop from a building. Next to it was a leather-bound journal. I stepped inside. I felt like I was entering a tomb, or perhaps a war room. I picked up the journal first. It was heavy. I opened it to the first page. "If you are reading this," Sylvie had written, "it means I am gone, and the family has likely lost its way. Or perhaps they were never found." I sat down on one of the boxes. I read. The journal wasn't a diary of feelings. It was a logbook. Sylvie had been the original founder of the Stewart Harbor Initiative, back when it was a small community fund, but as my father took over, she had started noticing discrepancies. October 14th, 2014, she wrote, "Graham claims the new vendor for the outreach program is essential. The costs are triple the market rate. The vendor is owned by a man named Vance, who I saw playing golf with Graham last week. I checked the address. It is a P.O. box in Delaware." Page after page detailed her suspicions. She called the foundation a reputation machine. She described how money would flow in from legitimate donors, then flow out to consultants and vendors who seemed to do very little actual work. It wasn't blatant theft, it was softer, grayer. It was influence laundering, buying favors, shielding assets. They use charity to clean their conscience and their cash, she wrote, and they are getting sloppy. I closed the journal. My hands were shaking. My father wasn't just a ruthless businessman. He was a fraud. I opened the laptop. There was a sticky note on the keyboard with a password, Blue Heron. I plugged it into the portable power bank I had brought. It booted up slowly, the fan whirring like a jet engine. The desktop was cluttered with folders. I clicked on a folder named Emails, archived. There were hundreds of them, but one thread caught my eye immediately. The subject line was Strategic Framing / The Daughter Narrative. The date was from 3 years ago. I opened it. It was an email from a partner at Hawthorne and Wicks Consulting, the same firm represented by the man in the gray suit at my party, Graham. The email read, "Regarding the potential compliance audit next quarter, we need a lightning rod. If the numbers don't add up, we need a narrative reason for the chaotic spending. Suggestion, start documenting unpredictable expenses related to family crisis. Nora's recent career change could be framed as instability. We can shield the core assets if we can attribute the irregularities to managing a personal family emergency." I felt the blood drain from my face. The daughter narrative. They hadn't just disowned me because I was annoying them. They had been planning this for years. They had been building a file on me, waiting for the moment they needed a scapegoat. If an auditor asked where the money went, they could point to the unstable daughter and the costly interventions and the legal fees to manage my crisis. I was the human shield. I closed the laptop. I felt sick. I felt violated in a way that went deeper than the birthday party. This was premeditated. They had looked at their own child and seen an insurance policy. I packed everything into my car. The boxes, the laptop, the journal. I didn't leave a scrap of paper behind. The next morning, I was back in Elise Carraway's office in Cresthaven. Elise spent 2 hours going through the boxes. She read the emails. She cross-referenced the journal entries with the contracts. When she finally looked up, her face was grim. "This is nuclear," she said. "Is it enough?" I asked. "Is it enough to expose them?" Elise took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "It is enough to start a war," she said. "But we have to be careful. This email about the daughter narrative is damning, but it is technically internal strategy. It is ugly, but not necessarily illegal to plan a narrative." She tapped a stack of vendor contracts. "This, however," she said, "this is where they are vulnerable. Kickbacks, shell companies, inflated invoices. This is fraud. But proving it requires more than just these papers. We need to show the money moving. We need to show that the services paid for were never rendered." She looked at me seriously. "Nora, if we dump this online, they will sue you for theft of proprietary information. They will say you stole these files from your grandmother. They will tie you up in court for 10 years. We need leverage that is clean. We need proof that touches the outside world." I looked at the vendor list Elise had spread out on the desk. One name jumped out at me. Marrowgate Outreach Services. I frowned. I knew that name. Why does that sound familiar? I asked. Elise looked at the contract. They are listed here as a provider for community housing support. They bill the foundation $20,000 a month for tenant advocacy. I pulled out my phone. I logged into my work email. I searched Marrowgate. A result popped up. An invoice from 3 months ago. Brightwell Housing Solutions, my employer had hired Marrowgate as a subcontractor for a project in East Briar. My stomach dropped. My parents' foundation was paying Marrowgate. My company was paying Marrowgate. Elise saw my face. What is it I think my job is part of the laundry? I whispered. I drove straight to the Brightwell office. I walked past my desk and went directly to the office of Tara Winslow, our internal compliance officer. Tara was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had recruited me 3 years ago. She liked me because I was meticulous. I hoped she still liked me after today. Tara, I said, closing her door, I need to ask you a hypothetical question. Tara looked up from her monitors. Hypothetical questions usually mean trouble. Nora, what is going on? I saw the video. Are you okay? I am fine. I said, but I need to know about a vendor. Marrowgate Outreach Services. Tara's expression changed instantly. Her professional mask slipped into something sharper, more guarded. Why are you asking about Marrowgate? She asked. Because I found their name in my parents' foundation records. I said, and I know we use them. And I have a feeling that if you looked at their invoices, you might find some redundancies. Tara stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned to her computer. She typed rapidly. I cannot show you the screen. Nora, she said, that would be a violation. But I can tell you that I flagged Marrowgate 2 weeks ago. Why billing irregularities? She said. They invoice for consulting hours that do not match our site logs, and their point of contact is a generic email address. I was about to initiate a vendor audit. I leaned forward. Tara, do not just audit them. Look at who introduced them to Brightwell. Tara typed again. She clicked a few times. She stopped. She looked at me. The referral came from a board member. She said, Graham Stewart. My father. He had used his influence to get his shell company hired by my employer. He was using my workplace to funnel money, if the audit hit. And Marrowgate went down. Guess who was the project manager on the file? Me. I was the project manager. They had set me up. If Marrowgate was exposed as a fraud, the blame would fall on me. Nora hired them. Nora managed them. Nora must be in on it. It was the perfect trap. The daughter narrative wasn't just a story. It was an operational reality. Tara, I said, my voice steady, I need you to document everything. I am not in on this. I am the target. Tara looked at me, and I saw the realization dawn in her eyes. She believed me. I will freeze their payments, she said, today, pending review. Thank you, I said. I went home that night and double-locked the door. I felt like I was living in a spy novel. But without the glamour, I was eating a bowl of cereal for dinner when there was a knock at the door. Not a polite knock, a frantic, heavy pounding. I checked the peephole. It was Ethan. I opened the door. My brother stood on the porch, looking like a wreck. He was wearing a tracksuit, his hair unwashed. He had dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped back. He walked in and paced the living room. He didn't take off his shoes. They are crazy, he said. He was talking to himself. They are actually crazy. Who? I asked. Mom and Dad. He said. He stopped pacing and looked at me. Nora, they are rewriting the will. I leaned against the kitchen island. I am sure I am already out of it. Ethan, that is old news. No, not you, he said. Me. He ran a hand through his hair. I told them I was hesitant about the Redmere interview. He said, I told them I didn't feel qualified. Dad lost it. He told me that if I don't secure this position, if I don't follow the script, they will cut me off too. They said the trust fund is contingent on active participation in family legacy. He looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. They own me. Nora, I have a car lease I can't afford. I have an apartment in the city I can't pay for without their stipend. I don't know how to do this. He gestured vaguely at the world. By this, he meant survive. I felt a pang of pity. I had been angry at him for the toast, for the silence. But looking at him now, I saw a 26-year-old child. He had never been allowed to grow up. He had been kept on a leash of gold, and now they were yanking it. "Ethan," I said softly, "you can leave." He laughed, a bitter sound, "and go where I have no savings. They control my bank account." I walked over to him. "Stay here," I said. He looked up. "What? Stay here?" I repeated. "I have a guest room. It is small, but it is free. I can help you budget. I can help you find a job that isn't connected to them. You can walk away." He stared at me. For a moment, I saw hope. I saw him considering it, the idea of freedom, the idea of waking up and not having to check a script before he spoke. Then, the fear returned, the conditioned response of a lifetime. "I can't," he whispered. "You don't understand. Nora, the Redmere due diligence team arrives in 10 days. If I am not there, if I am not playing the part, Dad said he would destroy me. He said he would make sure I never work in this state again. He is bluffing." I said, "He isn't." Ethan said. He pulled out his phone. "Look," he showed me a text from our father. "Ethan, the Redmere team arrives on the 12th. If you are not prepared, do not bother coming home. We will repurpose your assets." Repurpose your assets. Like he was a warehouse. I tried to grab his hand. "Ethan, listen to me. They are scared. That is why they are threatening you. We have leverage." I almost told him about the boxes, about Marrowgate. But I stopped. If I told him, would he tell them? Could I trust him? He was terrified. Terrified people make bad decisions. Ethan pulled his hand away. "I just came to tell you." He said, 10 days. That is the deadline. If you do anything, if you post anything else, please don't. For my sake. Just let the deal go through. Once they have the money, they will calm down." "They won't calm down," I said. "They will just get bigger." Ethan walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the knob. "I am sorry." "Nora," he said, "I really am. But I can't be like you. I'm not strong enough." He walked out. I watched him drive away. He was right. He wasn't strong enough. Not yet. But that didn't mean I had to let him drown. The next morning, I met Elise at a coffee shop in Cresthaven. I didn't want to go to her office. I felt paranoid. I told her about Ethan. I told her about the 10-day deadline. "Redmere is coming." I said, "That is the pressure point." Elise nodded. She took a sip of her black coffee. "Then we apply pressure," she said. She pulled a document from her briefcase. "This is a formal demand letter," she said. "It is not a lawsuit. Yet, it is a warning shot." She slid it across the table, to Graham and Celeste Stewart. It read, "Read defamatory statements and preservation of evidence. We represent Nora Stewart. We hereby demand an immediate retraction of the false statements made regarding our client's mental health and financial status on the date of." It went on to demand the preservation of all records related to the Stewart Harbor Initiative, specifically naming Marrowgate Outreach Services and Hawthorne and Wicks Consulting. Elise tapped the names. "When they see these names," she said, "they will know you know. They will know you are not just hurt. They will know you are armed. Send it." I said. Elise looked at me. "This will escalate things. Nora, they will not take this lying down. They will panic, and panicked people are dangerous." I thought about my grandmother's journal, the reckoning. I thought about Ethan, shaking in my living room. I thought about my own face, cropped out of the family photos, erased to make room for a lie. "Send it," I said again, "and send a copy to the Redmere Ethics Council." Elise raised an eyebrow. "That is a bold move. If they want to talk about stability," I said, "let's give them something to talk about." I signed the letter. My hand didn't shake. I was done being the daughter. It was time to be the plaintiff. The response from my parents did not come in the form of a phone call or a text message. It came in the form of a courier standing on my front porch at 7 in the morning, holding a thick, rigid envelope from the law firm of Hawthorne and Wicks. I signed for it. my handwriting shaky on the digital pad. I took the envelope into the kitchen and opened it with a butter knife. The paper inside was heavy, cream-colored, and watermarked. It smelled like toner and intimidation. Cease and desist, the header read in bold, capital letters. I scanned the document. It was a masterpiece of legal aggression. It accused me of harassment, defamation of character, and, most chillingly, theft of proprietary materials. It has come to our attention, the letter stated, that you may be in possession of confidential corporate records belonging to the Stewart Harbor Initiative. These records are protected trade secrets. Any dissemination of these materials to third parties will be met with immediate legal action, including but not limited to civil litigation for damages and criminal referral for corporate espionage. They were terrified. They did not know exactly what I had found in the storage unit, but the fact that I had mentioned receipts at the party, coupled with Elise's demand letter, had triggered a nuclear response. They were throwing big words at me, hoping I would flinch. Criminal referral. They were threatening to put their own daughter in jail to protect the grant money. I placed the letter on the counter next to my coffee. I did not panic. Panic is what they wanted. Panic is what the old Nora, the one who sought their approval, would have felt. The new Nora just felt a cold. Calculating resolve. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Elise. Add it to the pile. I typed, but the legal threat was only the first front of the war. The second front opened 2 hours later. When I walked into the Brightwell Housing Solutions office, the atmosphere was off. Usually, the office buzzed with the sound of phones ringing and project managers debating zoning laws. Today, it was quiet. As I walked to my desk, heads turned, conversations stopped mid-sentence. People looked at me, then looked away quickly, pretending to be absorbed in their screens. I sat down and woke up my computer. There was a meeting invite on my calendar. Added 10 minutes ago, urgent personnel matter. The meeting was with Marcus Thorne, the regional director, and the head of HR. It was scheduled for right now. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. I grabbed my notebook. I walked to Marcus's office with my head high, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Marcus was a good man, a pragmatic leader who cared about housing quotas and efficiency. He looked uncomfortable. The HR director, a woman named Linda, whom I had only spoken to twice, sat next to him with a grim expression. "Sit down, Nora," Marcus said. He did not smile. I sat. "We received a communication this morning," Marcus said. He slid a printed email across the desk. It was sent from an anonymous Proton Mail account. The subject line was, "Risk Alert, Nora Stewart." I looked at the paper. To the management of Brightwell Housing. The email read, "It is my ethical duty to inform you that your project manager, Nora Stewart, was recently removed from her family's charitable trust due to a severe mental health crisis involving substance abuse and erratic behavior. She has been stealing confidential data from her previous associations and is currently the subject of a legal investigation. She poses a significant liability risk to your clients and your contracts. It was the unstable narrative, weaponized and delivered directly to my paycheck." I looked up at Marcus. His face was unreadable. "Is this true?" he asked. "Are you the subject of a legal investigation?" I placed my hands flat on the table. I did not get angry. I did not cry. I remembered Elise's voice in my head. "It's only facts, Marcus," I said calmly. "My parents and I are in a dispute regarding my decision to distance myself from their business practices. They have threatened me with litigation to silence me." "That is true. And the substance abuse Linda asked," pen poised over her notepad. "I have never failed a drug test in my life," I said. "You are welcome to administer one right now. As for the theft, that is a characterization my parents are using because I possess documents that prove financial irregularities in their foundation." Marcus frowned. "Financial irregularities." I leaned forward. "This email is a retaliation tactic." I said, "It is designed to get me fired so I lose my resources to fight them. It is harassment." Marcus looked at the email again. "It is anonymous," he muttered. "Exactly," I said. "If there were a police report, or a court order, or a medical record, they would have sent that. Instead, they sent a ghost story. I opened my notebook. I have closed 3 major projects under budget in the last 6 months. I said, my performance reviews are impeccable. I am asking you, Marcus, to look at the employee in front of you, not the rumors in your inbox. The room was silent for a long 10 seconds. Marcus looked at Linda, then he looked at me. He picked up the email and crumpled it into a ball. We do not act on anonymous tips, Marcus said. But Nora, if this spills over, if legal papers show up here, they already have sent a cease and desist to my home. I said, but it will not affect my work. I am isolating the 2 worlds. Marcus nodded slowly. Keep it that way. You can go. I walked out of the office. My legs felt like jelly, but I kept my stride even. When I got back to the bullpen, I saw my coworker, Dave, watching me. Dave was a gossip, but he was also observant. Everything okay, he asked, leaning over the partition. I looked him in the eye. My parents are trying to get me fired because I caught them cooking the books. I said. Dave's eyes went wide. I didn't whisper it. I said it at a normal volume. 3 other people heard. The tension in the room broke. It shifted from suspicion to intrigue. The unstable narrative relied on me acting crazy. By stating the truth plainly, I had popped the balloon. I sat down and went to work. I wasn't going to let them take this from me. That evening, I went to Elise's office. She had the storage unit boxes spread out across her conference table like a chaotic mosaic. She looked tired. She had a smudge of ink on her cheek. You need to see this, she said as soon as I walked in. She pointed to a document sitting alone in the center of the table. It was a single page, yellowed slightly at the edges. I walked over and looked at it. It was a resolution from the Board of Directors of the Stewart Harbor Initiative. It was dated 8 years ago. I would have been 22, fresh out of college. Resolution to appoint officers. The header read, the board hereby appoints Nora Stewart to the position of Secretary and Compliance Liaison, effective immediately. At the bottom of the page was a signature. It was my signature. I stared at it. The loops of the N and the S were unmistakable. It was my handwriting, but I had no memory of attending a board meeting. I had no memory of being appointed compliance liaison. I don't understand. I said, I never worked for them. I never went to meetings. Elise looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and professional sharpness. Think back. Nora. She said, 8 years ago. You just graduated. Did they ever ask you to sign things? I closed my eyes, trying to access the memory. 8 years ago. I was living at home for the summer before starting my first job. The house was always full of paper. My father was always rushing. Then I remembered. It was a Sunday morning. We were having brunch on the patio. My mother was pouring coffee. My father was going through a stack of files. Nora, honey, my mother had said, Dad needs a few signatures for the family file. Just administrative stuff. Updating the trust, insurance forms, that sort of thing. My father had slid a stack of papers across the glass table. He had folded the pages back, just showing the signature lines. Sign here, he had said, pointing with his gold pen. And here, and here. It just keeps you on the health insurance and makes sure you are a beneficiary. I had signed. I hadn't read a word. I had trusted them. They were my parents. Why would I read the fine print of my own family? I opened my eyes. They tricked me, I whispered. They told me it was insurance paperwork. It is worse than a trick, Elise said. She tapped the document. Compliance liaison. She read. Do you know what that means? I shook my head. It means that legally, you were the officer responsible for ensuring the foundation followed the law. Elise said, you were the person who was supposed to catch the fraud. I felt the blood drain from my face. So when the fraud is discovered, I said, they don't just blame the unstable daughter. Elise said, they blame the negligent officer. She stood up and paced the room. It is brilliant, in a sick way. They made you the fall guy 8 years ago. They knew that if they ever got caught laundering money or inflating contracts, they could point to the compliance liaison. They could say, we didn't know Nora was in charge of compliance. Look. She signed the resolution. I sank into a chair. The betrayal hit me harder than the disowning. The disowning was reactive. This was proactive. This was grooming. They had raised me, fed me, educated me, all while positioning me to go to prison for them. My mother's voice echoed in my head, "Just helping your dad." She had smiled when she said it. She had poured me more coffee while handing me the pen that signed away my future. "So the disowning," I said, my voice trembling. "It is the final piece of the setup," Elise said. "They disown you for being unstable and a liability. Then, when the audit hits, they say, 'Oh, it turns out our unstable daughter was also incompetent at her job as compliance officer. She caused this mess. And that is why we had to cut her off.' It ties everything together. The narrative supports the legal defense. I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to scrub my skin. I wanted to burn the DNA out of my cells. What do we do, I asked, if my signature is on that paper? "Am I liable?" Elise sat down across from me. "Technically, yes," she said, "but we have a defense. We can argue you were a straw man, that you exercised no actual authority, that you received no compensation, that you were defrauded by your own fiduciaries." She pulled out a fresh notepad. "But we need to move fast. We need to file a declaratory judgment action. We need to go on the record immediately stating that you were unaware of this appointment and that the signature was obtained through misrepresentation. We need to resign from a position you didn't know you had." "Do it," I said. "And," Elise added, "we need to prove that the fraud was happening at a level you couldn't have controlled even if you were the officer. We need to prove the money trail leads directly to Graham and Celeste, not you." She pointed to the Marrowgate file. "That is why the vendor fraud matters. If we can prove Graham was personally directing the Marrowgate kickbacks, it pierces the veil. It shows intent." I nodded. I knew what I had to do. "I have to talk to Tara again," I said. The next day, I met Tara Winslow in the parking garage beneath the Brightwell building. We sat in her car. It was safer than the office. Tara looked nervous. She kept checking the mirrors. "I froze the Marrowgate payments," she said. "And you were right. What did you find?" I asked. Tara opened a folder on her lap. "I pulled the deliverables for the last year," she said. "Marrowgate has been billing us for tenant education workshops and community outreach seminars. 24 events in 12 months. She handed me a sheet of paper. I cross-referenced the dates with the property logs. She continued. "On the dates these workshops allegedly happened, the community rooms were either empty or booked for other things. A birthday party, a flu shot clinic, no workshops. They billed for air." I said, "They billed for ghost services," Tara corrected. "And it gets worse." I looked at the funding source. The money we used to pay Marrowgate came from a federal housing grant. I closed my eyes. Federal money. That meant the FBI. That meant prison time. "If this comes out," Tara said, her voice shaking, "Brightwell could lose its HUD certification. We could all lose our jobs. People could lose their housing." She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Nora, this isn't just a rich family hiding money from the IRS. This is theft from the poor. That grant money was supposed to help single mothers learn about credit repair. It was supposed to help seniors navigate Medicare. Instead, it went to a shell company owned by your father." I looked at the photos of the empty community rooms. I thought about the tenants I worked with. Mrs. Alvarez in 3B, who was trying to start a catering business. Mr. Henderson, who needed help with his disability paperwork. My parents hadn't just stolen from me, they had stolen from them. They had taken resources meant for the most vulnerable people in Briar Glen and turned it into country club dues and reputation management. The anger I felt wasn't cold anymore. It was hot. It was righteous. "I need copies of this." "Tara," I said, "I can't give you copies," she said. "That is proprietary data." "Tara," I said, "I am the compliance officer of the Stewart Harbor Initiative, or at least, I am on paper." I told her about the document Elise had found. "If I go down," I said, "I take this whole thing with me. But if I have this evidence, I can go to the authorities before the audit hits. I can be the whistleblower, and I can protect Brightwell by showing that we were victims of fraud, not accomplices." Tara stared at me. She processed the logic. She handed me the folder. "You didn't get this from me." she said. I put the folder in my bag. I got it from the storage unit. I lied. That night, Maya came over. I showed her the board resolution. I showed her the Marrowgate evidence. Maya paced my kitchen like a caged tiger. This is it, Nora, she said. This is the smoking gun. We take this to the Globe. We take this to the Times. We destroy them. She grabbed her phone. I know a journalist, she said. A guy who writes for The Atlantic. He would eat this up. The philanthropy trap. It's a cover story. I watched her. I watched the excitement in her eyes. It was the same excitement I had seen in my mother's eyes when she planned a gala. The thrill of the spectacle. No, I said. Maya stopped. What? No press. I said. Nora, are you kidding me? Maya said, her voice rising. They are criminals. They groomed you to be their scapegoat. They stole from poor people. They tried to ruin your life, and you want to keep it quiet. I don't want to keep it quiet. I said, I want to handle it right. I stood up and walked to the window. If I go to the press now, I said, it becomes a celebrity feud. It becomes, he said, she said. The headlines will be about the drama, not the crime. And my parents are good at drama. They will spin it. They will say I forged the documents. They will cry on camera. I turned back to Maya. And if I do that, if I use the press to hurt them, I am just doing what they did to me. I am playing their game. I touched the folder on the counter. I want justice. Maya, not revenge. Revenge is emotional. Justice is structural. I want to dismantle the foundation, not just embarrass it. I want the money returned to the housing grant. I want my name cleared in a court of law, not in a Twitter thread. Maya looked at me. She looked frustrated, but she also looked impressed. You are really taking the high road. Aren't you? She asked. I am taking the road that doesn't turn me into a monster. I said, they called me unstable. If I burn everything down, I prove them right. If I use the law, calmly and meticulously, I prove them wrong. Maya sighed. She put her phone down. Okay, she said. No press. But you have to promise me one thing. What when the FBI knocks on their door? I want to be there to see Celeste's face. I smiled. A small, tired smile. I think we can arrange that. My phone buzzed on the counter. It was late, almost midnight. I looked at the screen. Mother, I hadn't blocked her. Elise had told me not to. Let them reach out. Let them leave evidence. I let it ring. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I waited for the notification. New voicemail from Mother. I pressed play, putting it on speaker so Maya could hear. Nora. Her voice was soft. It sounded like the mother I remembered from when I was 6. The one who would smooth my hair when I had a fever. It didn't sound like the woman who had locked me out of my house. Nora. Please pick up. I know you are angry, and I know things have gotten out of hand. There was a pause. I heard a glass clink in the background. She was drinking. Your father is under a lot of pressure. We both are. But we miss you. We really do. This whole thing, the lawyers, the letters, it is just so unnecessary. Her voice cracked. It sounded genuine. If I didn't know about the daughter narrative email, if I didn't know about the compliance liaison trap, I might have believed it. Come home. Nora. Just come over for dinner. No lawyers. Just us. We can fix this. You can apologize. And we can make it all go away. We can call off the dogs. We can tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. We love you. Please. The message ended. The room was silent. Maya looked at me. She is good. She whispered. She is terrified. I said. I looked at the phone. It was emotional bargaining. It was the classic cycle of abuse. Hurt them, then hug them. She was offering me a lifeline, but the lifeline was a noose. Say you're sorry. That was the condition. Admit guilt. Accept the narrative. And in exchange, they would stop hitting me. For a second, a traitorous part of my heart wanted to go. I wanted my mother. I wanted the safety of the house, the smell of lavender, the illusion of family. But then I looked at the folder with the Marrowgate invoices. I looked at the resolution with my forged consent. They didn't love me. They loved the shield I provided. They missed their scapegoat, not their daughter. My hands were shaking. I could feel the tremor in my fingers. It hurt. It hurt physically to know the truth. I pressed the save button. Then I pressed delete. I am not going home, I said to the empty room. I looked at Maya. Tomorrow, we file the papers. The week Redmere Capital arrived in Briar Glen felt less like a business audit and more like a royal visitation. The town seemed to hold its breath. The streets were cleaner, the traffic seemed more polite, and my parents, Graham and Celeste Stewart, were performing the role of their lives. I watched it unfold from my laptop screen in my kitchen, scrolling through the curated feed of the Briar Glen social circle. There was a photo of a luncheon at the yacht club. My father was laughing with a group of men in suits, presumably the Redmere due diligence team. My mother was touching the arm of a woman I didn't recognize. Looking engaged and empathetic, the caption read, "Building the future with Redmere Capital. Legacy matters." Then came the family content. A photo of my parents and Ethan at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new park bench. They were standing close together, a tight phalanx of unity. Ethan looked handsome but stiff, his smile stopping at his lips. And then, the subtle knife twist, a post from my mother's personal account, reposted by the foundation. It was a picture of a single white rose in a vase. The caption was vague but targeted. Thinking of our loved ones who are away seeking healing. Privacy and patience are the greatest gifts we can give. Hashtag mental health awareness, hashtag family first. I stared at the screen. They were implying I was in rehab. They weren't just erasing me, they were quarantining me. By framing my absence as seeking healing, they insulated themselves from questions. If anyone asked, "Where is Nora?" The answer was a sad shake of the head and a whisper about treatment. It made me look broken and them look like saints for funding my recovery. It was brilliant. It was evil. I closed the laptop. Nice try. "Celeste," I whispered to the empty room, "but I am not in rehab. I am in litigation." 2 hours later, I was walking into a conference room at the Kleinford Legal Group. Elise Caraway was already there, arranging a stack of documents on the mahogany table. Sitting across from her was a man I had only researched online, Jonas Pell. Jonas was the ethics counsel for Redmere Capital. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a sharp, angular face and wire-rimmed glasses. He didn't look like a corporate shark. He looked like an academic, someone who cared about footnotes and fine print. He stood up as I entered. "Ms. Stewart," he said. He didn't smile, but he didn't look at me with pity either. He looked at me with curiosity. "Mr. Pell," I said, "thank you for seeing us. I understand this is irregular." Jonas said, "Usually, we deal with the board directly, but Ms. Caraway insisted that this information was critical to our risk assessment." He sat down. He didn't open his briefcase. He just folded his hands on the table. Elise nodded to me. This was my cue. "Mr. Pell," I said, keeping my voice level, "my parents are currently presenting you with a narrative of financial stability and family unity. I am here to provide context that contradicts that narrative." I slid a binder across the table. It wasn't the full dump of documents from the storage unit. Elise and I had debated for hours about what to include. We had chosen precision over volume. Inside that binder, I said, "You will find 3 things. First, a copy of a vendor contract between the Stewart Harbor Initiative and Marrowgate Outreach Services. Second, an internal email thread between my father and Hawthorne and Wix Consulting regarding a strategy called the Daughter Narrative. And third, a signed board resolution appointing me as compliance liaison 8 years ago, a position I was never informed of and never performed duties for." Jonas opened the binder. He flipped to the email thread. I watched his eyes scan the text. Strategic framing, scapegoat, asset shielding. His expression didn't change, but his posture did. He leaned in closer. "This is disturbing," he said quietly. He turned the page to the Marrowgate contract. "I assume you are aware that Marrowgate is a shell entity," Elise asked. Jonas looked up. "We have flags on Marrowgate." "Yes. Our preliminary audit showed high billing with low verifiable output. But we were told— He paused. You were told what I asked. Jonas looked at me. He seemed to be weighing how much to say. We were told that the oversight of that vendor fell under a specific junior officer who was struggling with personal issues. He said, we were told the irregularities were due to negligence, not malice, and that the officer in question had been removed. I felt a cold chill. They had already done it. They had already blamed me. I am that officer, I said, or rather, I am the person they assigned that title to without my knowledge. I pointed to the board resolution in the binder. I never hired Marrowgate. Mr. Pell, I never approved an invoice. I found out I was the compliance liaison 3 days ago. My signature was obtained under the guise of family insurance paperwork. Jonas looked at the signature, then he looked at the daughter narrative email again. The timeline matched. The strategy matched. He took off his glasses and cleaned them with a microfiber cloth. It was a stalling tactic. He was processing. Ms. Stewart, he said finally, I need to tell you something. He put his glasses back on. 6 months ago, Redmere received an anonymous letter. It was mailed from a post office in Briar Glen. It was short. It just said, check the family dynamics. The compliance is a ghost story. My heart skipped a beat. Grandma Sylvie. No, she was gone. Who sent it? I asked. We don't know, Jonas said. We get crank letters all the time during these deals. Disgruntled employees, jealous neighbors. Usually. We ignore them if they aren't specific, but this one stuck with me because of the phrase ghost story. He tapped the binder. This validates the ghost story, he said. This turns a whisper into a scream. He looked at me with a new respect. If this daughter narrative is real, then the foundation isn't just mismanaged. It is operating a fraudulent cover-up, and if we partner with them, we become liable. What happens now? Elise asked. Jonas closed the binder. He put his hand on it firmly. Now, I paused the process, he said. I cannot recommend moving forward with a $50 million grant while there is credible evidence of fraud and identity theft involving a board officer. He stood up. I need to take this back to my team. I need to verify these documents. If they are authentic, the deal is dead. He looked at me. You realize what this will do to them? He asked. I stood up to meet his gaze. I am not doing it to them. Mr. Pell, they did it to themselves when they decided I was disposable. Jonas nodded. A slight, almost imperceptible nod. Good day, Ms. Stewart. The reaction was immediate. It wasn't public yet. Redmere didn't issue a press release, but inside the Stewart household, the bomb must have gone off. That evening, a black sedan pulled into my driveway. It wasn't my parents'. It was a courier, another one. He handed me a large envelope. This one wasn't from a law firm. It was on heavy, cream stationery with my father's personal monogram. I took it into the kitchen. My hands were shaking again. Every time a car pulled up, I felt that spike of adrenaline. I opened the envelope. Inside was a document titled Settlement Agreement and Mutual Release, and a check. I stared at the check. It was for $500,000. $500,000. I read the cover letter. It was written by my father. It was handwritten. Nora. It said, we are tired. You are tired. This has gone too far. We are willing to help you get a fresh start. The condo in the city is yours. The check is yours. We will issue a joint statement saying we have reconciled and that you are pursuing new opportunities. All we ask is that you sign the attached agreement and withdraw your claims. I read the agreement. It was dense. Clause 4, confidentiality. The recipient agrees never to disclose, discuss, or disparage the Stewart Harbor Initiative, its officers, or its vendors. Clause 7 show release of liability. The recipient hereby releases Graham and Celeste Stewart from any and all claims regarding past employment, board appointments, or fiduciary duties. It was a bribe. For one exhausted moment, I stared at the check. $500,000. I could pay off my mortgage. I could move away. I could go to Europe. I could disappear and never think about Marrowgate or Redmere or Briar Glen again. It was so tempting, just to stop fighting, just to let them win. But take a piece of the spoil with me. Then I read Clause 7 again. Release of liability. If I signed this, I wasn't just taking money, I was accepting the history they had written. By releasing them from liability for my board appointment, I was tacitly admitting that the appointment was valid. I was admitting I was the compliance liaison. If the FBI came knocking next year about the stolen housing grant money, my parents would show them this document. Look, they would say, Nora settled. She accepted responsibility. She took the money and ran. The $500,000 wasn't a gift. It was severance pay for a fall guy. I picked up the check. I walked to the shredder in the corner of my office. I didn't hesitate. I fed the check into the machine. The sound of the paper tearing was the most satisfying sound I had heard in weeks. I fed the agreement in next. I am not for sale. Graham, I whispered. My phone rang 10 minutes later. It wasn't my father. It was Ethan. I picked up. Ethan, he was crying. Not the quiet, polite crying he did at funerals. This was ragged, gasping sobs. Nora. He choked out. Nora, what did you do? I sat down on the floor. I felt a surge of protectiveness. I didn't do anything. Ethan, I just told the truth. What is happening? Dad is destroying the house, Ethan said. He is throwing things. He screamed at Mom. He said you ruined it. He said you killed the deal. He paused, taking a jagged breath. He told me that you are going to ruin my life too. He said that because of you, Redmere is pulling out, and my mentorship is gone. He lied to you. Ethan, I said gently, I didn't kill the deal. His fraud killed the deal. He doesn't see it that way, Ethan shouted. His voice cracked. He told me I have to fix the optics. He told me I have to propose to Sarah. Sarah was Ethan's girlfriend of 6 months. She was sweet, 24, and totally unready for marriage. What I asked, he wants a wedding. Ethan said, he wants a distraction. He told me to propose this weekend. He said we need a good family story to bury your bad family story. He said if I don't do it, he will cut off my car payments and my rent. I felt a wave of nausea. They were using his marriage as PR chaff. They were willing to mortgage his future happiness just to get a few positive headlines in the Briar Glen Gazette. Ethan, listen to me. I said, where are you? I am in the city, he said, at my apartment. Drive to Cresthaven, I said. Meet me at the diner on Main Street, the one with the neon sign. 40 minutes. I can't, he said. If he finds out I'm talking to you. Ethan, I said, my voice sharp. Do you want to marry Sarah because you love her? Or because Dad needs a headline? Silence. Meet me, I said. The diner was bright and smelled of grease and coffee. I sat in a booth in the back. Ethan walked in 10 minutes later. He looked like a ghost. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt, and his eyes were bloodshot. He slid into the booth opposite me. He didn't order anything. I pushed a glass of water toward him. Drink, I said. He took a sip. His hand was shaking. I have to do it. Nora, he said, I have to propose. I don't have a choice. I have no money. I have no job prospects without Redmere. I am trapped. I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a check. I pulled out a folder. I opened it. Inside were the documents I had shown Jonas Pell, the emails about the daughter narrative. But I also had something else. I had a printout of the Redmere Mentorship Program guidelines. Read this. I said. Ethan looked at the paper. Eligibility. He read, candidates must demonstrate independent leadership and ethical decision-making. Family connections are considered, but reliance on family influence is a disqualifying factor. I looked at him. Dad told you the mentorship was a lock because of him, right? Ethan nodded. He lied. I said, Redmere doesn't want Daddy's boy. They want a leader. If you propose to Sarah just to please Dad, Redmere will see right through it. Jonas Pell isn't stupid. He will see it as a desperate PR stunt. It will actually hurt your chances. Ethan stared at me. You think I know? I said. I slid another paper across the table. It was a brochure for Harborstone Community Credit. It was a fictional nonprofit, but in our world, it was real. It was a partner organization that Tara at Brightwell worked with. They offered financial counseling for people starting over. I talked to a contact there. I said, "They have a program for young professionals transitioning to independence. They can help you refinance your car. They can help you find an apartment you can actually afford on a junior salary." Ethan looked at the brochure like it was written in alien script. "Refinance," he said. "A cheaper apartment." "Nora, I can't live in a studio. I can't drive a Honda." "Why not?" I asked. "Because I am a steward." I reached across the table and took his hand. It was cold. Being a steward is what is killing you. "Ethan, look at what it is doing. It is making you marry a girl you aren't ready for. It is making you terrified of your own father." I squeezed his hand. "The money they give you is a leash. Ethan, as long as you take it, you are their pet. If you want to be a man, if you want to be free, you have to cut the leash." Ethan looked down at the brochure. He traced the logo with his thumb. "I don't know if I can," he whispered. "I'm scared." "I know," I said. I was scared too. When I paid off my student loans, I ate ramen for 3 months. I didn't go on vacation for 2 years. But the first night I slept in a house that I paid for. It was the best sleep of my life. I left the brochure on the table. "You don't have to decide tonight," I said, "but don't propose to Sarah. Not for him. If you do, you will resent her, and you will resent him, and you will end up just like them, bitter and fake." Ethan didn't say anything. He just stared at the brochure, but he didn't push it away. The next morning, I got a text from Tara at Brightwell. "It is done. We suspended the contract." I sat back in my chair at work. This was the domino I had been waiting for. Brightwell Housing Solutions was the largest legitimate client Marrowgate had. The other clients were likely smaller shells or one-off consultations. Brightwell was the anchor. If Brightwell suspended the contract, the revenue stream for Marrowgate dried up. And if the revenue dried up, the Stewart Harbor Initiative's impact numbers would collapse. I knew how my father's accounting worked. He counted pledged services as delivered impact, he told donors. We provided $100,000 worth of housing support based on the Marrowgate invoices. Now, those invoices were void. The math was breaking. The Foundation's annual report was due next month, without the Marrowgate numbers. The report would show a massive gap between funds raised and funds used. That gap would trigger an automatic IRS audit. It was a slow-motion car crash, and I was the one who had cut the brake line. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and grief. I was destroying my father's life's work. But his life's work was a lie. You cannot mourn a mirage. Then, an email pinged in my inbox. A Google alert. Stewart Harbor Initiative, Founders Gala. I opened the link. It was a press release. Despite recent rumors, the Stewart Harbor Initiative is proud to announce its annual Founders Gala this Saturday at the Marrow House. Join Graham and Celeste Stewart as they celebrate 30 years of community service. Special announcement regarding the Redmere partnership to follow. I stared at the screen. They were still doing it. Jonas Pell had told them the deal was paused. I had shredded their settlement check. Brightwell had cut their funding, and they were throwing a party. It was pathological. They believed that if they just smiled hard enough, if the champagne was expensive enough, if the lighting was flattering enough, they could bend reality to their will. They were going to stand on that stage and lie to the entire town. They were going to announce a partnership that was dead on arrival. I looked at the date. Saturday, 2 days away. I picked up my phone and called Elise. "I am going to the gala," I said. "Nora," Elise said, her voice warning. "That is a bad idea. It is private property. They can remove you. It will be a scene. Let them remove me." I said, "I am a shareholder." What I reminded her of the document she had found. "I am the compliance liaison," I said, "and technically, I am a board member until I formally resign or am removed by a vote. The bylaws say board members have a right to attend the annual meeting. The gala is listed as the annual meeting of donors." Elise was silent for a moment. I could hear her typing. "You are technically correct," she said. "But Nora, why we have the evidence? We have Redmere. Why walk into the lion's den because they are going to lie?" I said, They are going to stand up there and say everything is fine. They are going to use my name again. They are going to say I am in treatment. I took a deep breath. I need to be there. Not to scream, not to throw a drink. I need to be there so that when they look out into the audience, they see the truth staring back at them. I need to be the ghost at the feast. Elise sighed. Okay, she said, but we need ground rules. No emotional outbursts. No accusations that you can't prove in court. If you speak facts. I understand, I said, and Nora Elise added, wear something bulletproof, metaphorically speaking. Saturday night arrived. I didn't wear the emerald dress for my birthday. That girl was gone. I wore a black suit, tailored, sharp, severe. I wore heels that clicked like hammers on stone. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. Minimal makeup. I didn't want to look like a debutante. I wanted to look like an auditor. Maya drove me. She pulled up to the Marrow House, the same venue where they had disowned me weeks ago. Are you sure about this? Maya asked. Her hands were gripping the steering wheel. I am sure, I said. I got out. The air was cold. The valet looked at me, confused. He recognized me. He knew I wasn't on the list. I walked past him. I walked to the entrance. The check-in girl was new. She smiled brightly. Name Nora Stewart. I said, board member. She scanned the list. Her smile faltered. I don't see your name here. Ms. Stewart. Check the bylaws. I said calmly. I didn't wait for her to check. I walked past the table and into the ballroom. The room was golden. The same chandeliers, the same jazz quartet, the same people, the mayor, the bankers, the social climbers. But the mood was different. It was brittle. People were drinking too fast. The laughter was too loud. The rumors had started to leak. I walked into the center of the room. I didn't hide in the corner. I stood near the bar, ordering a sparkling water. A hush rippled through the crowd. It started near me and spread outward like a wave. People turned. They whispered, "Is that her? I thought she was in rehab. She looks fine. She looks scary." I stood perfectly still. I held my head high. I made eye contact with anyone who dared to look at me. Mrs. Higgins looked away. The banker looked at his shoes. Then, I felt it, the weight of a gaze that was heavier than the others. I turned toward the stage. My parents were there. They were shaking hands with the mayor. Celeste saw me first. She froze. Her hand went to her throat, clutching her pearl necklace. Her smile dropped, not into anger, but into pure, unadulterated shock. She hadn't expected me. She thought I was broken. She thought I was hiding in shame, or counting my settlement money. She looked at my suit. She looked at my face, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in my mother's eyes. She wasn't looking at her daughter. She was looking at her reckoning. Graham saw me next. His face turned a dangerous shade of purple. He took a step forward, as if to storm off the stage and drag me out, but Celeste grabbed his arm. She whispered something to him. She gestured to the crowd. Everyone is watching. Graham stopped. He smoothed his tuxedo. He forced a smile that looked like a snarl. I raised my glass of water to them. A silent toast. I am here, the gesture said, and I am not leaving. The music swelled. The lights dimmed. The speeches were about to begin. I turned to face the stage. I was ready. The ballroom of the Marrow House was a vacuum of golden light and expensive perfume. I stood near the bar, nursing my sparkling water, watching the machinery of the Stewart Harbor Initiative at work. It was a beautiful machine. The table settings were exquisite, featuring white lilies and silver chargers. The wine flowed with the perfect rhythm of a well-staffed event. The guests, the zoning board members, the hospital administrators, the local influencers were all playing their parts, laughing at the right moments, clapping with the right amount of enthusiasm. But the air was different tonight. It was thick. Word had traveled. Not the full truth. Not yet. But whispers. The rumors about Redmere. The rumors about my condition. The rumors about the cease and desist letters. The people in this room were predators in their own right. They could smell blood in the water, even if they couldn't see the wound. I watched my parents on stage. They were seated in high-backed velvet chairs, looking like royalty in exile. My mother, Celeste, was wearing a gown of midnight blue, her smile fixed in place like a porcelain mask. My father, Graham, sat with his legs crossed, projecting an image of relaxed power. But I knew him. I saw the way his fingers tapped a restless rhythm against his knee. I saw the way his eyes darted to the entrance every time the doors opened. He was waiting for Jonas Pell. He was waiting for the check. He was waiting for validation that his house of cards was actually a castle. I checked my watch. It was 8 o'clock. The speeches were beginning. The lights dimmed, focusing a spotlight on the podium. A large screen behind the stage displayed the foundation's logo, a stylized lighthouse beaming light over calm waters. The irony was so sharp it almost cut. My father stood up. He walked to the microphone. The applause was polite, dutiful. "Thank you," Graham said. His voice was warm, wrapping around the room like a blanket. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate 30 years of service, 30 years of giving back to Briar Glen." He paused, letting the number sink in. 30 years is a long time. He continued, "It is a generation. And in that time, we have learned that the only currency that truly matters is not the dollar. It is integrity." I felt a physical jolt in my chest. Integrity. He was saying the word without flinching. He was looking out at a room full of people whose housing grants he had funneled into a shell company, and he was preaching about integrity. "We live in a complex world," Graham said, his voice dropping to a somber register. "A world that challenges our values, a world that tries to tear families apart." He looked down at his podium, then looked up, his eyes glistening with practiced emotion. "As many of you know, this has been a difficult year for the Stewart family. We have had to make hard choices. We have had to face painful realities. Here it comes. I thought, the pivot. We have learned that sometimes loving someone means letting them go." Graham said, "It means recognizing that you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved." The room went deadly silent. Everyone knew who he was talking about. He wasn't naming me, but he was painting my silhouette in the air. He was casting me as the tragic, lost soul, the weight around the family's neck that had to be cut loose for the ship to sail. He sighed. A heavy, tragic sound. "Our daughter, Nora, is not with us on stage tonight," he said. "And while that breaks a father's heart, we find comfort in knowing she is somewhere she can get the help she needs, and we are committed to protecting her privacy during her struggle with instability." He looked at the crowd, asking for their sympathy, asking for their complicity. "So tonight," he said, his voice rising, gaining strength, "we choose to move forward. We choose stability. We choose to honor the future. And that is why we are so proud to announce our upcoming partnership with Redmere Capital." He was doing it. He was announcing the deal. He was betting everything on the bluff. I set my glass of water down on the bar. The coaster made a soft thud. I didn't run to the stage. I didn't scream. I simply walked forward. I walked down the center aisle, between the round tables. My heels clicked on the hardwood floor. Click, click, click. The sound cut through the silence of the room. People turned, heads swiveled. The wave of whispers started again. Louder this time. Graham stopped speaking. He saw me. He squinted against the spotlight, trying to make out the figure approaching him. When he realized it was me, his face went slack. For a split second, the mask fell, and I saw pure, unadulterated panic. I stopped 10 feet from the stage. I stood in the pool of light, creating a silhouette that mirrored his own. I raised my hand, not in a fist, but in a polite gesture, like a student asking a question in a lecture hall. "May I have the microphone?" "Graham," I asked. My voice was not amplified, but in the dead silence of the ballroom, it carried to the back rows. Graham stared at me. He gripped the podium. "Nora," he said, his voice tight, straining to maintain the benevolent father persona. "This is not the time. We can discuss this privately." We tried privately. I said, "You sent a cease and desist letter to my home. You sent a settlement check to buy my silence. Private is over. I saw the event coordinator, a young woman with a headset, looking frantically at my mother for instructions. Celeste was frozen, her hand covering her mouth. I turned to the table nearest me. It was occupied by the board of the local hospital. There was a wireless microphone sitting on the table, used for the Q&A session earlier. I picked it up. I switched it on. A high-pitched whine of feedback cut through the air, making everyone wince. Then, silence. "I am sorry to interrupt the dinner," I said. My voice boomed through the speakers. It was steady. It was the voice of a project manager giving a status report. "My name is Nora Stewart, and despite what has just been implied from this stage, I am not in a treatment facility, I am not unstable, and I am not a tragedy." Graham stepped forward to the edge of the stage. "Cut the mic," he hissed to the sound booth. "Cut it now." But the sound guy was confused. Or perhaps he was just watching the train wreck like everyone else. The mic stayed on. "I am here to correct the record," I said. "I am here because 3 weeks ago, in this very room, my parents publicly announced they were disowning me to protect their reputation. Tonight, they are using my name to sell a narrative of family sacrifice." I looked directly at my father. "But sacrifice implies you gave something up." I said, "You didn't give anything up. Graham, you threw me overboard to lighten the load." "Nora," my mother shouted. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly. "Stop this. You are making a scene." "I am not making a scene." "Mother," I said calmly, "I am making a report." I turned back to the audience. I saw the faces of the donors, the people who had written checks for $5,000, $10,000. "I want to state only facts." I said, "Fact number 1. I have formally requested a retraction of the defamatory statements made about my mental health. Fact number 2. I have discovered that for 8 years, I was listed as the compliance liaison for this foundation without my knowledge or consent." A gasp rippled through the room. The bankers exchanged looks. Compliance liaison was a legal term. It meant liability. And fact number 3. I continued, I have submitted documentation to the State Oversight Board and the Department of Housing regarding significant irregularities in vendor contracts, specifically regarding a company called Marrowgate Outreach Services. The name Marrowgate hung in the air like smoke. I saw my father flinch physically, as if I had slapped him. He knew that if I named Marrowgate, I knew everything. "You are lying," Graham shouted. He wasn't the benevolent patriarch anymore. He was the cornered animal. "This is slander security. Get her out of here." 2 security guards started to move toward me from the perimeter. But before they could reach me, a chair scraped back at the VIP table near the front. A man stood up. He was wearing a gray suit and wire-rimmed glasses. He looked out of place among the tuxedos, like a judge in a nightclub. It was Jonas Pell. "Excuse me," Jonas said. He didn't need a microphone. He had the kind of voice that commanded courtrooms. The security guards stopped. Graham froze. "I am Jonas Pell, representing Redmere Capital," he said. He walked into the open space between me and the stage. He didn't look at me. He looked at my father. "Mr. Stewart," he said, "you just announced a partnership with my firm." Graham wiped sweat from his upper lip. "Yes, Jonas, we are so proud." "Mr. Stewart," Jonas interrupted, "as of this afternoon, Redmere Capital has formally paused all negotiations with the Stewart Harbor Initiative." The room erupted. It wasn't applause. It was a low, chaotic rumble of shock. Paused. In the corporate world, paused meant dead. Jonas continued, raising his voice slightly over the noise. "We have received credible evidence regarding the compliance issues Ms. Stewart just mentioned," he said. "Until an independent forensic audit is completed, there is no partnership, there is no grant, there is no deal." He turned to the room. "Redmere Capital values integrity," he said. "Real integrity, not the performance of it." He sat down. The silence that followed was total. It was the silence of a kingdom collapsing. The social armor that Graham and Celeste had spent 30 years building didn't just crack, it disintegrated. The guests, the people who wanted to be seen with the Stewarts, were already pulling away. I saw Mrs. Higgins check her phone. I saw the hospital board members whispering, likely discussing how fast they could distance themselves. Graham stood on the stage, swaying slightly. He looked small. The spotlight didn't make him look powerful anymore. It made him look exposed. Celeste was the first to move. She realized the ship was sinking, and she did the only thing she knew how to do. She tried to charm the iceberg. She walked down the stairs from the stage. She moved toward me. Her face was a kaleidoscope of emotions: panic, rage, calculations settling finally into a tight, terrifying smile. "Nora," she said, her voice trembling but loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Nora, darling, please, you are upset. We can talk about this. We can fix this." She reached out for my hand. She wanted to create a visual. Mother and daughter reconciling, a family misunderstanding. If she could touch me, she could spin it. I watched her hand coming toward me. It was the same hand that had boxed up my life, the same hand that had signed the checks to the shell company. I took a step back. I didn't scream at her. I didn't cry. I just drew a line in the air with my posture. "Not tonight." "Celeste," I said. I didn't call her Mom. I called her Celeste. The rejection was absolute. It felt small, just 2 words, but it was monumental. It was the sound of a cord being cut. Her hand dropped. Her smile faltered, then vanished, replaced by a look of cold, hollow fear. She looked around the room and realized that no one was buying it. The performance was over. Then, the side door opened. Ethan walked in. He wasn't supposed to be there yet. The run of show had him coming out later for the toast. He was wearing his tuxedo, but his tie was undone. He looked pale. He looked like he was going to be sick. Graham saw him. He saw a lifeline. Ethan Graham shouted from the stage. "Ethan, come up here." Graham grabbed a piece of paper from the podium. "Read the statement." Ethan Graham commanded. Tell them about the family unity. Tell them we are strong." Ethan walked to the bottom of the stairs. He looked at his father. He looked at the piece of paper Graham was waving like a flag of surrender. Then he looked at me. I stood there, holding the wireless mic, my heart hammering. I hadn't forced him. I had given him a choice. Ethan looked back at his father. "No," Ethan said. It wasn't loud, but in the acoustic perfection of the room, it was a gunshot. Graham blinked. "What did you say?" I said no. Ethan repeated. His voice shook, but he stood his ground. "I am not reading that. Dad." "Ethan," Graham warned, his voice dropping to that dangerous, low growl that used to terrify us. "I don't know the full truth," Ethan said, addressing the room, addressing the silence. "I don't know about the vendors or the compliance, but I know my sister." He took a deep breath. "And I won't be used to destroy her anymore," he said. "I am done." He turned around and walked away from the stage. He walked toward me. He didn't hug me. He just stood next to me. A physical realignment of the family map. Graham lost it. The control he had maintained for decades. The veneer of the civilized philanthropist finally snapped. He didn't care about the donors anymore. He didn't care about the optics. He was a narcissist losing his supply, and he reacted with pure, unmasked rage. "You ungrateful little traitor," Graham screamed. His voice cracked, high and ugly. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "I made you," he shouted. "I built this, and you think you can take it down. You think you can walk in here with your lies." He leaned over the edge of the stage, his face red and distorted. "I will bury you. Nora," he bellowed. "I will sue you until you don't have a shirt on your back. I will make sure you never work again. You are in breach of fiduciary duty. You are a thief. I will ruin you." The guests recoiled. This wasn't a disagreement. This was violence. I stood still. I let him scream. I let everyone see it. I let them see the man behind the curtain. Elise Caraway appeared at my elbow. She was wearing a gray blazer and holding her phone. She had been recording. "That is a direct threat of legal retaliation and witness intimidation," she said calmly, her voice low. "We have it on record, and we have 200 witnesses." She touched my arm. We are done here. Nora, she said, leave, now, before he comes off that stage. I looked at my father one last time. He was still shouting, but his words were turning into noise. He was ranting about loyalty and money. Celeste was trying to pull him back, weeping openly now, her humiliation complete. I felt a strange lightness. The fear was gone. The need for their approval was gone. All that was left was the truth. I turned to Ethan. Are you coming? I asked. He looked at his parents. Then he looked at the exit. Yeah, he said. I'm coming. We walked out together. Maya met us at the double doors. Grabbing my other arm, we formed a phalanx, moving through the stunned crowd. The Red Sea didn't part for us this time. It just watched, paralyzed by the crash. We pushed through the heavy doors and into the cool night air. The flashbulbs blinded me instantly. Reporters. They were swarming the driveway. The Briar Glen Gazette, but also news vans from the city. The rumors of the Redmere collapse must have leaked hours ago. Ms. Stewart, Ms. Stewart. Microphones were thrust in my face. Is it true the partnership is canceled? Did you steal from the foundation? Is your father being investigated for fraud? I stopped. Elise stepped in front of me, shielding me. No comment. Elise said, "Move back." But one reporter, a woman with sharp eyes from the local channel, shouted a question that cut through the noise. Nora, do you have anything to say to your parents? I paused. I looked at the camera lens. I saw the red light blinking. I could have said a million things. I could have screamed about the abuse. I could have listed the crimes. I could have danced on their grave. But that was their game. That was drama. I took a breath. The air smelled of rain and pine needles. It smelled clean. I am cooperating with a review process. I said, my voice was calm, grounded, and I am protecting my name. That was it. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I turned and got into Maya's car. Ethan piled into the back seat. Elise got into the passenger side. Maya started the engine. As we pulled away, I looked back at the Marrow house. The lights were still blazing, golden and bright against the dark sky. Inside, the music had probably stopped. Inside, the kingdom was burning, but I wasn't watching the fire. I was watching the road ahead. The headlights cut a path through the darkness, illuminating the asphalt, the trees, the world beyond Briar Glen. I reached back and squeezed Ethan's hand. He squeezed back. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know how bad the fallout would be. We didn't know if we would win the lawsuits or lose the house or end up broke. But as the Marrow house faded into the rearview mirror, shrinking until it was just a speck of light in the distance, I knew one thing for sure. I was finally, truly, owning the story. Thank you so much for listening to We're Here to Disown You. This story was a journey into the dark heart of family expectations and the price of breaking free. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you in a bustling city, a quiet suburb, or somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed Nora's fight for truth, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories. I have many more tales of justice, retribution, and the strength it takes to stand up when the world tries to sit you down. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember the best revenge is simply living your truth.